Hi everybody, and welcome to Danger Teaches How to Dock in Kerbal Space Program. We're going to go ahead and just fast forward a little bit through the launch. We're going to assume that you already know how to do that. If not, go ahead and check out my other video. I'll link to it in the description on how to actually achieve orbit in Kerbal Space Program. For this, there's a couple of things you're going to have to know going in. First of all, obviously, how to orbit. And otherwise, a couple of things on the nav ball, particularly the yellow markers and the pink markers. The yellow markers show your relative direction. So the direction that you're facing for the one that looks like a plus and the one that looks like an S is the opposite of the way you're facing. Now in docking, once you get to target view right there above the nav ball there, you see it says orbit now. When it says target, it's showing you your motion relative to your target. So while you're orbiting or getting into orbit, you want to go ahead and select your target as your target. You do that by just clicking on it and selecting set as target. Now that we're in orbit, we'll do the rest here in real time, starting here. The first thing you want to do is make sure your craft is in good working order. Make sure there's enough fuel to do what you need to do, because it's a little bit laborious and you don't want to get into a situation where you can't succeed. After that, take a look at your target's orbit. See how it's lined up, what its Apple Apps is and its Peri Apps. You'll see these couple of markers here on the screen. They will converge into one sometimes, but usually it's two. Those are your closest approach. That's the game telling you where in your orbit and your target's orbit you're going to be closest to each other. When it splits up, it's showing you the next two closest approaches. They're very important. They're going to give you an idea of when and how close you're going to get to your target. Go ahead and take a look at the node here that I'm looking at, the ascending node. There's another one on the other side called a descending node. That shows how lined up your orbits are as they go around. It doesn't do any good if they make a complete cross. You're only going to meet 2 times in the orbit. So what you do is you make a maneuver node on your ascending or descending node, and then pull the purple markers until you get that down to as close to 0 as possible. Then you go ahead and get up to that maneuver node and make your burn. This is absolutely vital for the docking process. You don't want to only have 2 shots around the orbit. It also makes it so when you eventually neutralize your relative speed, so you're going the same speed and direction as your target, that you'll stay with them and not go flying off. So normally these are pretty small burns, so it's pretty economical to do. Next, you want to go ahead and make another maneuver and try to see how close you can get with those 2 rendezvous markers I spoke of, the purple and the orange ones. Usually it takes a lot of trial and error here until you really get the hang of it. So you just fiddle with it and hover over the marker, see just how close you can get. See, I'm not having too much luck here finding one that's very close, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep fiddling with it. Eventually I decide to go ahead and do a larger orbit by bringing your orbit above or below your target's orbit. You change how fast you go around your target body, in this case Kerbin. That's a bit of a tongue twister. It makes it a bit easier to find one of those nodes where you can line up at that point. So we just go ahead and burn pretty much anywhere. Bring your Apple Apps out. You can see here it's well beyond 2 or 3 times higher than my target's orbit. Then we're just going to go ahead and warp up to our new Apple Apps, and we'll go ahead and bring the Peri Apps up as well. We're going to try to make this as circular as possible. When you perform a docking in an ideal situation, you're going to have both your crafts going around the equator of your planet year-round and in perfect circular orbits. And like I said, having the craft you're controlling being above or below the orbit by 2 or 3 times, just to make it as easy as possible. You see here I'm going for orbit of about 250 kilometers. By the way, you'll see on the right hand side the flight engineer. That's Kerbal Engineer. I'll go ahead and link to it in the description. That's just to give me readouts of what my orbit's doing. It's a very handy tool, especially for the new player, and pros alike actually. Now that we went ahead and have our orbit circularized and above it, we'll make another maneuver node, and we'll pull the cross looking yellow marker until you see our Peri Apps, or projected Peri Apps, come down to about the orbit of our target. Then by swinging it around, we can work on the timing. So there are 2 independent factors there, are height of the Peri Apps and the timing. The height of the Peri Apps is easy, it's just a matter of lining it up. The timing's a little bit more difficult. You'll see the rabbit ear sort of look here. The one on the left is 1 less orbit. The one on the right means this very spot, but in another orbit from the one I'm on. So I hit it once, it means not when I get there now, the next time, but 1 time after that. So eventually I find one pretty close, and then we go ahead and warp to our maneuver, and we'll make the burn just to go ahead and get that orbit. So of course you want to line it up. I probably should have done that before I did the warp, but it's fine. Now the other markers on the nav ball that are important, I said, were the pink ones. Those pink markers are showing which direction your target is in and the opposite. So you can have your nose or your tailpipe pointing at the target if you're looking at one of those purple markers. The circular one, if you're pointing at that, it means the front of your craft is pointing directly at your target. It's very useful for docking, as you'll find out in a little bit. So we're just preparing for this burn here now. And this is just like a deorbit burn to get out of the atmosphere, but since we're so high up, we're just bringing it down. That's going to speed us up so we actually give it an opportunity to catch up to us by the time we get to the other side of the planet. Once you get that burn as close as you can, just check it out, see how close you're doing, and then go ahead and time warp to it. And you see it's actually coming closer and closer to you, to the point where it almost looks like it's going to hit. In this example, I get pretty close, and then I go to my second approach vector. Now, this is what we call a rendezvous, when you get real close to it, not right on top, but close enough, usually within a couple of kilometers, less than a kilometer preferably. If you're under a kilometer, you've rendezvoused. And from there, you can just start matching your speed to keep up, which is what I'm going to do here now. What that's going to do is bring your apps in, so it's really going to mirror your target's orbit, so you're going the same way, just as much as possible. You're going to stick with it, not get closer, not get further away. You want to make sure your nav ball's in target mode. You see there on the top, right over the nav ball target, and point on that yellow marker that's got the X shape to it, and just burn until your speed gets zeroed out. Now again, this is just your relative speed to your target. So since I'm pointing more or less at the purple marker, I see my nose is more or less pointed at it. So go ahead and point to the purple marker and light up the engines a little bit just so you're going. Now at this point you want that yellow marker, your prograde, to be right on top of that purple marker. That means you're traveling in the direction that the target is, right on top of each other. On the other side here you'll see the opposite icons where they should be as well. That's a good thing. As you see here, sometimes you're going to have to do it a couple of times just to close that gap. You don't want to be too fast with this. It's very important to not be impatient. Just take your time, be patient, and if you really can't hold off the impatience, time warp is your friend. Just be careful, remember to quick save. Since you're in orbit, you can quick save, and if you do something wrong, you can always go back to that point and continue from there. So we're going to line it up again here, light the engines up, and if you go in the map mode, you can see the separation going down. That's your projected, again, how close you're going to get to it. So you can keep an eye on that and time warp just a little bit so you can keep an eye, and when you get to your closest point, you go ahead and turn your ship around and make that target speed go back down to 0 or just as close to it as you can manage. So you do that by just lighting up the engine on that other yellow marker. There we go, just like, well, a little bit more here, just like this here. And it's alright, it moves, it doesn't have to be perfect. 0.1's good for most cases. So, and then repeat the process. Point at that purple marker and line it up. Now that we're at about 1/4 of a kilometer, this is where we really get to the docking. This is the fun part. Now I'm in chase mode here. I recommend everybody does that for docking. It makes life easier. You press V, as in Victor, on your keyboard to switch your camera angles. You want to be on the one that says chase. From there, up is up, down is down, regardless of how you swing your camera. So you want to just go past it here like I did. Just go past it. Make sure those docking ports are, roughly looking at each other. You don't want to be trying to dock with the engine. Then right click on the docking port, set as target, right click on your own, control from here, just to make sure. That really shouldn't be necessary, but you always want to do it just to make sure. From here, like I said, you go to the chase view, press R to turn your RCS on, and you use the J, K, L, and I keys to control your what we call translation. Now what you're trying to do here is get that purple marker, your normal marker, and that yellow marker all to be lined up. See, just like that. I'm getting it on. So use the I, J, K, and L keys just to get that yellow one just smack dab in the middle of that purple one. And then, yep, see, so there you hit it. Once you're there, you're pretty much there. From here, you just gotta let the magnets take over. If you keep rocking back and forth, it'll eventually take hold. Sometimes you gotta switch to the other craft, do a little bit of rocking back and forth. Eventually, it'll grab hold, and you'll have a solid docking. It's just as simple as that. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. It means a lot to me. If you enjoyed it, give me a like. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll keep putting them out there and teaching you how to do fun things in Kerbal Space Program. Thank you very much. Until next time, it's been a lot of fun. See you around.